Hello, everyone. Good evening if you are in the Western Hemisphere. Good morning if you are in the Eastern Hemisphere or Western Hemisphere, excuse me. For those of you who are following us around the globe, today I'm bringing you among our distinguished guests who you have seen around. Barakat Kiros, who's been around in the West Coast of the United States as a political advisor to our organization. And nearly every protest I have traveled with, and I've come to know him in the last 8-9 months due to the crisis in Tigray. And then we've got Basarat Amare. You've seen him on Teddy Press and other media outlets. I don't have enough words to describe. I don't want to be biased, but the reality is he is one of the original freedom fighters, known as the Tigray People Liberation Front, known as TPLF as an acronym. He was and is among our hero, and it is indeed because of people like him we have the ability and the will of the people of Tigray at home and in the diaspora to unite and to work together. So tonight I will primarily focus in English. We'll discuss about the current situation in Ethiopia, in particular in the Tigray region, why Tigray is under attack by the federal government of Ethiopia and by the various regional forces, particularly the Amhara forces and the Fana forces. And to make matters worse, as most of you and all of you may know, international government that has no business in political affairs in Ethiopia, the Eritrean government declare war and genocide on the people of Tigray. And recently we have the Oromo fighters have discussed with the TDF to collaborate and work side by side. We also have the Agov community as well as the Command community that will be touching bases on those. So first, I would like to start with Ato Basarat. Welcome to Cyber Power of Tigray English program. I appreciate, and it's an honor for me to actually have you in this show. You are among our heroes who defeated Mengistu and brought peace and justice to Ethiopia, which we saw the economy booming in my generation. And it is an honor for me to introduce you and also to ask you this question. Why do we, the people of Tigray, have to face such atrocity for the very people whom we love and care for as one people of Ethiopia to come to this end?
Thank you, Mike, for having me and for giving me this opportunity to speak to the people whom I love. And I really appreciate for introducing me as well. And regarding the question that you asked me to share, why are these forces who forged alliance to attack the people of Tigray, which I call it war of genocide against the people of Tigray? Why did it happen this? Well, this is a broad based question. We may not cover it in a very short period of time, but we can put some important points to know what it is, why we become to this point. The first thing that comes to our mind is the state of Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a country that we believe formed not naturally, or it's not an organic state. It's not an organic nation. It is a collection of nationalities, and this is an empire. Those nationalities have come together by force, and we call it an empire. An empire cannot really, in history, create or make a nation. There is no history that can be transferred into modern civilization if you are an empire. And all empires have melted down or gone. They did not function. Europe is a good example. They did not transfer themselves into nation state, but they dissolve. But Ethiopia continues to happen for the last centuries. Those who love to make some false propaganda love say 3,000 years old Ethiopia, but this is a fabrication. There is no 3,000 years old country in Ethiopia. It's perhaps 150 years, as it brought the southern portion of Ethiopia now, the Oromo and the southern people. This is what we call Ethiopia, which happened close to 150 years old. So here in this empire, there are people with uneven development, most of them nomads, and then who do not have similar history, who are not comfortable to be governed by autocratic rulers, because they do not have any common history. They will always be under constant threat to each other. On the other hand, it has become very problematic to form or to create a nation, a very similar nation that can govern as a peaceful society. The political elites for the last perhaps 100 years, including during the APRDF period, were unable to form a system, a political system that governs the people fairly and close to democratic rule. They failed, all of them. So it is nor a democratic, it failed to create a democratic society, a system that can be govern people, or these people are not with the same heritage, the same culture, so they cannot live in peace at all. So this empire should have been, to begin with, existed in different form. The nations and the nationalities should have got their right to live by themselves, or to have a sort of system that can keep them together. But it didn't happen. This is one cause. The APRDF in the past 30 years or so tried to give the nations and nationalities their right to govern themselves, but democratically there was no any system also that give the chance different political opinions to participate as equals. So there was still a problem in the political system. That political system was not inclusive. It was somehow, it gave right to all nations and nationalities, but denied democratic rights for those political opponents. So this by itself brought a problem, brought to this current situation. On the other hand, in Eritrea, there was an deterred dictator, a very unique dictator, who ruled Eritrea for the last 30 years. He came through armed struggle. He's the founder of the Eritrean independence. However, he is known to be a dictator, like the North Korean type dictator in Africa. He ran war against all his neighbors, very much undeterred. And this, the government in Ethiopia, which was led by EPRDF at the center, it was our TPLF. They still failed to tackle this dictator or to help the Eritrean movement to overthrow or to deter this dictator. He created a problem some 21 years, an invasion in Ethiopia. He failed to maintain that invasion. He was defeated, but he was not removed from power. However, he kept his arrogancy for 20 years, and then as the EPRDF came to lose its power and the TPLF was driven out from the central power, he came to control Ethiopia. And this situation by itself shows the reason just not to elasticate. It was the empire is first to be the problem for this genocide. And then the undeterred dictator. And third, a comprehensive political plan to manage all this problem from distance that failed the EPRDF. And these are the real causes that brought to this genocidal situation in Tigray. Well, also we did not know there was a barbarian society within Ethiopia. Like if you go to the region in Amhara Kilil, which we call it Region 3, there are multiple ethnic groups, but it was given as an Amhara nation. There is no nation, Amhara nation. Amhara I'm not saying that there is no Amhara. There might be Amhara society or community, but there is no nation. There is, if it exists, it is majority. But around that territory, I'm not sure. I'm not sure the depths or the size of this group. It functioned for a long time, for almost centuries, as a barbarian in that corridor. They were looting, there were killings, there were people who never worked, but they were selling people. They were transporting people like slaves until the 1970s. So this group has come to being now to slaughter the Command people, the Benishangul Gumuz people, and it crosses the Abai River up to the Oromo region, Wallaga. And finally, we saw this group claiming land in Tigray. There is a group, there is a class, a money class behind this group, which we call it Salit or secession politics from Humara to take it by using this gangster team that its origin came from barbaric association in the Gondar area. This served to this genocidal state as a vehicle to kill, to destroy Tigrayans. But it did not start in Tigray. It started way beyond Tigray, before Tigray, in the Kamant region, in the Benishangul Gumuz, as well as in the Oromo areas. But in Tigray, all forces, because they fear if they come one by one, they know what the answer would be. But they reached an agreement, an alliance to come to Tigray. And they use this kind of vehicle, in the Amhara barbarian team, to slaughter our people. And they use the Eritrean force to the Eritrean dictator also to lead this situation. This is basically what I can tell you in this short time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Basarat. I know I ask a broader question, so to keep it in perspective and for us to stay connected. So I'm going to just shorten the questions so that we can spread them among us. So I'm going to come to you, Mr. Barakat. Given what we know and what our brother just expressed and explained, the trouble in Ethiopia, and my question for you, what is going to happen to the region as a whole and to Ethiopia as a nation? Because now the tide has shifted. The fighting, for the most part, is taking place in the Amhara region. Of course, there's also a section in the Afar region, and we also have a pocket in the Hamara region that we still are occupied. But for the majority part of the process right now, TDF is within reach of Desse. So probably a matter of days before they capture Desse. And now we have the Oromo on the south potentially becoming an alliance, which is a huge shift. So my question for you again is, what is the future of Ethiopia? Or do we really even care about the future of Ethiopia? Should this just be the focus of Tigray?
Thank you, Mike, for having me. I think I rather talk much about Tigray that I care less what's happening in Ethiopia, because 9 months our people has labored, went through hell. Now we have to think about the future of Tigray and the future of our people. Let me start this because I don't want to repeat the historical genesis of what Bisrat has expressed in his speech. What I am interested in here, I will start about the condition, what's happening right now. As you know, Mike, I believe Abiy has still an opportunity to stop his hateful rhetoric and also Ashin come to negotiating table. Until now, Abiy has not shown any interest. Actually, a couple of days, he called National Patriotism Day, whatever, a call to save Ethiopian nation. I don't know what it meant. And there is a lot of, bravado is being shown on social media, as you have seen it a couple of days, at least, to negotiating table. But this is a person who doesn't really understand politics and international, because his indoro or his unmatured behavior in the world is bringing shame to Ethiopia that has been built on sacrifice of our brothers and sisters. What 30 years has Ethiopian has shaped greatness was hard work in terms of diplomacy, in terms of infrastructure in terms of growth that the Ethiopian people seem to forget. I have never seen a country built through rhetoric and through emotion, through promise. This is what's happening in Ethiopia right now. He's delivering sweet words that everybody wants to hear. But as far as the facts on the ground, I will try because the facts on the ground speaks for themselves. I rather prefer not to spend much time dwelling or discussing the incredibly successful action by Tigray Defense Forces. As we know, Tigray Defense Forces are deep into the Amhara's region. I think over 20 Amhara's areas are being occupied. I don't want to use occupied because we are not occupying. We are just advancing towards the enemy. Because when you are going to another territory, especially the Western media, they have the way of manipulating that the TDF advances the Amhara region as occupied force. It is not occupied force. It's just using an advanced area toward this where the enemy concentrations are. And the Tigrayan Defense Forces are not only winning in battle, they are also winning the hearts and the minds of the Amhara people, especially the lies and the propaganda from the diaspora and also from the Prosperity Party is being necked now. They really have nothing to say because everything they see in their own eyes that Tigray Defense Forces are the most disciplined army ever in 21st century. Imagine, many of them have lost family. Many of them have lost their property. Many of them have lost rape, every imaginable and unimaginable actions that happen in their country. So the temptation is always there. Imagine yesterday's killer trying to be apprehended in a war-torn area. And you have seen so much emotional pouring pictures, all the ladies giving them food, giving them water, comforting them. And some of them are definitely sure who has been committed so much atrocity and genocide in Tigray. So such army as the one who is leading, despite still some rumors, especially in recent days in Afar area, about 200 people, the usual lies they try to blame to Tigray Defense Forces as they have done, as if they have committed atrocity to the brothers and sisters of Afar people. And there is no harm in a way that the TDF will lose that because the track record speaks in volume for itself. So, in a short, the hypocrisy of the Abiy regime and his blind and hateful supporters continue to spit their venoms in diaspora. As a recent video recording between the Amhara leader and the diaspora, you heard him. They are trying to raise funds for their genocide action. So this, especially in the diaspora, we have to export them. And on the second level, you asked why the Evil Alliance are committing genocide in Tigray. Well, now they seem to get it, that the whole world knows about their lies and the deceptive methods in diaspora and inside Ethiopia. I'll give you a good example. This is about, I think, August 11. Robbie Gramer, I think his name is Robbie Graner. He is a diplomacy and national security reporter at Foreign Policy. If you remember, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, I think it's about 2 weeks, rebuffed a request to meet with a top Biden administration official to address the security or civil war worsening and humanitarian crisis in Tigray region, dealing a blow to its effort to tamp down the conflict and the threatens to fear famine and destabilize the world, not only Ethiopia but the whole Horn of Africa. But when Samantha Power, head of the USA, imagine Agency of International Development or USAID, visited a couple of weeks in Ethiopia to seek a greater access to humanitarian and workers' safety in Tigray. She was asked at a press conference why she didn't meet with the Ethiopian Prime Minister. She was told he was not in the capital city. He left to the war front. Imagine, Mike, Ethiopia was once seen in Washington as an anchor of stability in East Africa, and recipient of the amount of 1 billion, nearly 1 billion in USAID in 2020. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the whole world is now witnessing that Power's, especially her visit, is something that the U.S. officials have been speaking on condition of anonymity many times, that they feared that the condition and the conflict in Syria might bear early warning of ethnic cleansing and potentially genocide. As you hear, many outlets, the USA and Ethiopian relations are worsening as the conflict continues, leaving the Biden administration no room for negotiation with Ethiopia. So, as you heard recently, over 120 years of diplomacy work now, the Ethiopian embassy in Washington is closed. In a short, behind the scene, many U.S. officials are believing that the Abiy administration has committed genocide and rape in Tigray. And we are just waiting the official condemnation and resolution probably within 2 weeks. So in a short, what I'm trying to say here is Abiy has no room for negotiation because he has done so much heinous crimes in Ethiopia. So bearing that, he doesn't have any leverage in terms of military success and diplomacy. So he will stick to the last minute, and he will just probably flee like his predecessor, like Mengistu, to other sanctuary area. And this guy, he doesn't care about Ethiopia. Imagine, this war is about a war to take land from Tigray.
Thank you.
And so what I'm trying, in short, is this war was waged because the Amhara elites, especially the morbid, what I call them, trying to take the land that belongs to Tigray. As Bisra said, it is about politics sesame. They're trying to use that as a battle ground, Tigray. For that matter, Mike, what you have to see in this conflict is the Somalia, the Eritrean, the Fano, the Ethiopian Defense Forces are trying to help expansionists of Amhara elites to take land from Tigray. That is the bottom line. And I think in the light of our discussion, what we have to concentrate is what's happening in Tigray and what is the future of Tigray. Careless what's happening in Ethiopia, because we have spent so much time and energy talking about Ethiopia. I think for now, let's talk about Tigray. What is awaiting for Tigray, and what is the future of Tigray in terms of this hostile region area? How do we influence our neighbors, especially the Sudanese, and also the Afar, and also part of the Eritrea also? There are some people who can support us. So in the light of this difficult region or vulnerable region, how is Tigray's future should be the questions that we have to discuss.
Thank you, Ato Barkat. Dr. Gladius, welcome. I apologize. I did not want to interrupt in the discussion, but we appreciate you joining us. Before we obviously go back to Tigrinya, which we will, I wanted to welcome you first and foremost to Cyber Bar of Tigray. I know you've been in the show many times. We started in English because we're trying to help out to understand the young diaspora Tagaru about the history of Tigray, the history of Ethiopia, the Horn of Africa, and Africa as a whole. But most importantly, the generations to come for us, for Tigrayans. And for those who do not understand or speak Tigrinya, we're trying to explain to them the crisis that Tigray has faced on the hands of Abiy Ahmed, who wanted to turn into a king as a killer. No government in most of our lifetime has used rape and starvation as means of weapon. And so my question to Dr. Gladius, you are among the distinguished Tigrayan American who's lived in this country, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, nearly 4 decades, nearly 39 years, almost 40. I've done a little bit. I've done a little research about you, even though I haven't had the opportunity to meet with you in person. I think by far you know deep the history of Ethiopia, Tigray, and of course the history of the world. So my question for you is, how are we going to come together, first as Tigrayans and Tigrayan Americans, those of us in the diaspora who successfully defeated the dictator in Ethiopia and Eritrea politically, financially, at all level? How do we bring the forces in the diaspora and the forces in Tigray to build strong Tigray first? Then what is the future of the Horn of Africa as a whole and Ethiopia in particular?
Thank you, Mike. That's a very good question, by the way. I think we have, by and large, discussed this topic in the past, but it's always good to reiterate and analyze things on the ground so that people can understand what's happening in the Horn of Africa. So I see it as a very relevant question. But let me begin with what's happening, what's going to take place in a couple of days, as a matter of fact, because I have written about it a long time ago, that whether we like it or not, there's going to be some change in the Horn of Africa, geopolitical change. I've written about it. And if you remember, certain diplomats from the United States have been going back and forth between the United States and Ethiopia. It looks like they have a great agenda in shaping the future of the Horn of Africa, not just of Tigray and Ethiopia, but of the Horn of Africa as well. I can see clearly that Jeffrey Feltman, now going back again to Djibouti, Ethiopia, and the United Arab Emirates. He's been going back and forth. He actually was conducting what we call shuttle diplomacy between the leaders of Eritrea and Ethiopia and the United States. It looks that in the final analysis, maybe, I don't know, maybe a certain kind of confederation is going to be established in the Horn of Africa. That might include Eritrea as well. But change of leadership can come soon. I don't know when, because with the people like Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki, even the United States census that they're not going to promote their national interests with these people. So they need a new leadership. And it's going to come for sure because clearly Abiy Ahmed has failed miserably. And the Eritrean guy, of course, has been sitting there for 3-4 decades now, doing nothing. So they don't want him to be there either. On the other hand, what Mr. Barakat was discussing earlier, I can see now the upper hand of the Tigray Defenses Forces, which is clear. Can you imagine coming out from that situation in Tigray, cornered in from different angles, from 4 different forces, and defeating all of them, and coming and having an upper hand, now going into the hinterland of what we call Ethiopia. Okay? Now, here, there's a very interesting thing happening, by the way. That one, by the way, I just wrote a piece on Twitter yesterday, saying actually that to my gratification, Oromo Tigray alliance is actually taking place now. But back in April, I have written an article proposing that the Tigray Oromo alliance is a precondition for the survival of Ethiopia, if at all that country is going to survive. Now it's coming. Incredible. I mean, I was not predicting, I was probably forecasting. However, to my gratification, it's happening because that's what I needed. I wanted to happen, actually. The Oromo forces are strategic allies of the Tigray Defense Forces. Strategic allies. Oromo is very important in the making of the Ethiopian nation state, in the making of the modern Ethiopian nation as well. They are in the central southern part of, and western as well, of Ethiopia. They are the biggest in number. They have the largest regional state. And they are near Addis Ababa, the capital. Actually, the surrounding area of Addis Ababa entirely falls within the Oromia region. So they're going to be important allies for the Tigray Defense Forces. Now I can hear from the leader of the Oromo Liberation Army saying we're going to ally ourselves with the Tigray Defense Forces. And Dr. Debrecen said the same thing to Reuters. Talking with Reuters, he said, we're going to have an alliance. We've come to agree that we're going to do it together. This is a fantastic opportunity now for the other smaller nationalities like Agao, like Afar, like Amant, like Benishangul. They're going to have a fantastic opportunity now because isolating themselves, they've been trying to counter the offense coming from the government of Abiy and the Amhara militia as well, alone. Now they're going to have a united front. In fact, last time I proposed, in this cyber part of Tigray, that we need more than an alliance. They actually have to establish a united front because that's going to play a decisive role in the future of the Horn of Africa, in the future of Ethiopia, in the future of Tigray as well. Now, Tigray is better off, of course. But, as I always argue, even if you become independent, it really doesn't matter. The objective condition is going to govern you because your neighbors are enemies. Eritrea from the north, the Amhara militia from the south. So unless somehow they are completely gone, or somehow you overcome all these encounters, challenges, you're not going to have peace at all, even if you are independent. So that has to be considered seriously by the Tigrayan leadership. That's why I needed alliance with other Ethiopian forces, because these Ethiopian forces ultimately can establish Ethiopia, a new Ethiopia, federal Ethiopia, whatever we call it, confederal, whatever we call it. Then, of course, it's going to be decided by the people ultimately. And now this is, and then uh, 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 always from the American side, also, although I see some shortcomings with respect to implementing the policies. Uh, just today, Jack Sullivan, the national security advisor of our President Biden, said the different forces, the many forces in Ethiopia, should negotiate, should come to the round table and talk. But sometimes they are not realistic because they cannot simply come to the round table as we can see it right now. But the idea is good anyway. Ultimately, they might. However, now, what I proposed a couple of years ago, that Abiy should negotiate with the TPLF, and of course, he rejected it. Now, I'm not going to say it. The Tigray Defense Forces they don't need to negotiate with Abiy Ahmed. The Abiy government is going to collapse soon. It's going to go. They don't need to negotiate, but they can negotiate with other Ethiopian fighting forces, other Ethiopian progressive forces, and then of course decide on the future of Ethiopia, what kind of government install in that capital city called Addis Ababa. Okay, so this is going to be, this is how I see it now. This is how I see it. This is how it looks now.
Dr. Gladius, you threw in some very interesting but also surprising topics for me that I was not waiting to hear. Eritrea joining as a central system, which, if you and I were talking, or all of us talking a few years back, I would love to hear there was a talk about having African passport to unite Africa.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been amazing. So, but I'm going to go back to Mr. Bisrat. Given the political dilemma and given the military strength TDF has now, Dr. Gladius actually already jumped ahead of me. The strength of TDF is not a gift. It is a people like yourself, who we are lucky and blessed enough to have, the freedom fighters from the Derg era, from the Badame war that we had, that is put together a military in such a short period of time to defeat the most militarized nation called Ethiopia. And not to mention, Eritrean forces came in tens, if not hundreds of thousands from all over corner Tigray and felt they were going to just smush it just like egg and crush it. So to go back to Dr. Gladius's point, why at this point we want to stay as a federal system in Ethiopia? I agree with him. We should negotiate with not the devil like Abiy Ahmed and Isaias, but why would Tigray get remaining part of Ethiopia, having a federal system after such atrocity? I'm speaking from emotional point, not from the very well thought out Dr. Gladius's idea, but my emotion is slightly, if not far different, because I simply just can't see trying to deal and live with this kind of people who rejected and destroyed our region, and just to make matters worse, raped so many young girls and nuns from churches and whatnot. I can go on and on. So as an activist, I struggle to really say, like, I mean, it's an amazing idea, but I'm just, that part just blew my mind. So I'm going to go back to Dr. Gladius, but I want to come to you. Why should Tigray remain part of Ethiopia if there was a federal system in place?
Mike, excuse me.
Thank you for having me again.
Bisrat,
I heard,
Sorry.
yes, sir.
and I was going to say, I let Mr. Bisrat continue, but I want to clarify what Mike just said, because it's one option. That's only one option. I have several options, okay? Go ahead, Mr. Bisrat.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I know Dr. Gladius have 3 options for the people of Tigray this time.
Go ahead, yeah.
I also know that Dr. Gladius had a good choice. A good choice means in one choice prior to this war for the people of Tigray, so that I know he's going to say that by himself, but I can testify that he has 3 choices for Tigray at this moment. Okay, I may really differ a little bit from Dr. Gladius. At the end of the choices he has, we perhaps will be on the same page one day. In the first place, we both believe the people has to determine their future. And the people of Tigray will be given, assuming that will be given a referendum, and that referendum will give them the chance to determine their future for the people of Tigray. Dr. Gladius has no problem in this, and he has a good choice to lay down for the people. Okay, now I have one point to say for everybody to know. If we assume Tigray to become independent republic because of the genocide or because of the hate that was up and down in the past 100 or something years, including in the past 3 years, it will not be a good choice. We have to have any bigger reason to have our independent republic. And Ethiopia, and I'm coming now to the choice, to the best choice for the people of Tigray and to the rest of the Ethiopian people. Ethiopia is an empire. It has repeatedly failed to build a nation and a state. It's not only for the political elite's failure. It is the nature of the empire that made it fail again and again. So doing the same thing and in the same way, you're repeating the same failure. You don't get any progress. Also, Tigray is a nation. It's a built nation, not a simple nation. It is a built nation. It is coherent. It has shown to the world its coherency. It is a homogeneous, and not only homogeneous, it has a value system that Ethiopia never had. Ethiopia, the rest of Ethiopians do not have it. They might have their own value, but Tigray is the most coherent and homogeneous society that its people live in peace and they can accomplish. Now, this built nation has lived within the conflict-ridden Ethiopia for the last hundreds of years, just shouldering many problems, waging wars, defending itself. But Ethiopia, having Tigray within it didn't show any progress, didn't use Tigray as a weapon to development, as a weapon to democracy, as a weapon to build civilization. But it chose now, this empire chose now to hire unhinged, very terrible dictator. Not only dictator, it's a leader of a failed state who got supported by the Western and got a prize, a peace, Nobel Peace Prize, ironically turned it to become a genocidal state leader who chose the very nation, the coherent, homogeneous state that could have transferred Ethiopia into civilization, chose then to genocide, to eliminate, to eradicate its people. This is what Ethiopia is now. Now, those people who think that Ethiopia, by having Tigray together, whatever federalism is, it will progress. It will create a viable, strategic, important economic ground. Those who believe this, where in the world can they bring one example that came a country similar to Ethiopia that came to civilization? Nowhere in the earth. Africa has about 53 states, but none of them built a nation. None. They have Ethiopia's future. They are suffering. They could not build viable economy. What is viable economy? An industrial-based economy. None of them could create. If we fail to do this, why do we have to stay there? Is there any way so that Tigray can perform this and then help Ethiopia in different form, which Dr. Galadius will give us the other choices for the rest of Ethiopia, how Tigray can connect, can play a role in different form to Ethiopia. Because these people are also, we have lived with them for centuries almost. And then we cannot abandon them. It's for our advantage. Even for our advantage, it's not good in security wise, and economic wise, and in social relations. We live in Africa, but we manage things differently than a lot of Africans. We have to speak it straight. The war that we have run in the past 9 years is a demonstration that these people have the ability to do something better than they used to do. Big time. We, all scholars, have to think that they have to be a good interpreters who these people are. What are the abilities that they can perform in the near future, soon, and help the rest of the Ethiopians or Africans? By putting them together, by becoming big, does not necessarily mean you are solving the problem. To become a big is nothing. There is nothing bigger than Africa. Africa, perhaps 1.2 billion people. How is Africa now imaged by the world? So I would prefer Tigray to distance from there and create a new system. But the system that we have now, if we are thinking the system that we have now in our mind, we are corrupt. We have to get rid from the system that we are thinking we are now. Tigray is a built nation, built, period. You don't need to build it. You don't need to spend money in there. You don't need to wrestle to build a nation. It is a built nation for long period of time. We only need a state, a political state over it, and just quickly develop it, quickly use it as an instrument to change Ethiopia as well as Africa. This is my suggestion at this time. And then regarding the TDF that you have raised it in your introduction, before you ask me this question, yes, the people of Tigray are very lucky. I know they could have done it even. But this moment, the 2021, the time that the genocidal war came to us, is a very different, unique time for the people of Tigray. There are 3 generations who met together that brought the TDF, the birth of TDF. And we saw a very fast, excellent, resilient, very calculated, beyond anybody can expect it. Why? There are 3 factors met together. Of course, the people of Tigray, they knew that I know that they would win this war, but it would have been very, very wrong and very staggering. But the stunning speed that we saw in the past 2-3 months has its own factors. Number 1, the 17 years heroes, all of them are in the range of 60s, their age, most of them. And in number, they are tens of thousands. They were around all districts in Tigray. They were not perished, they were alive. Very much lucky. These guys have played the most important role in building the TDF, because in number they were massive, they were poor, they were aged in their 50s and 60s, but luckily they were alive and they turned the TDF into army. The second point, an angry, massive use, very angry, massive, in tens of thousands, who were attacked by genocidal forces, came together to fight. The third is a highly articulate military generals who know 3 layers of war tactics, war strategies. They went through academic education, they went through military academy in the United States, China, Israel. These are generals who have brought, who articulated also the tactics, the strategy, and the now that the world is stunned by this real shocking situation. So 3 of them came together. These 3 factors came together that made Tigray as a nation to be the luckiest at this moment. So this force, you will not find it anywhere else in liberation armies. And then neither Isaias nor Abiy Ahmed would never create it in 5 or 10 years. So the war will not be managed. Absolutely. The enemies cannot manage it. They cannot resist it. So we should have the confidence that this war is almost completed in our supermassive. So this is that I can share you, and thank you for giving me again the opportunity.
Let me jump in, Mike, if I can. I think both Dr. Galaudius and Surat raised so many issues, but some of the issue I would like to defer in terms of, I think when it comes to the fate of Tigray, it is not going to be determined or by politicians, but by the people of Tigray itself. And right now, we have a long way to go. Still, we are fighting, but it is worth to discuss and exchange some views what it should be. In regard what Busrat have said in terms of Tigrayans, what separates us from the rest of Ethiopians, if I can summarize it in a way, evolutionary and revolutionary change. The evolution, what is taking place in Tigray as a birth of history, as a viable for Ethiopia survival, because it is Tigray where the civilization of Ethiopia has started. So through those evolutionary changes, there is one thing, that fear of God or too much value on humanity. This is something that comes through evolution. It doesn't come one day you want to be a humanitarian. Despite the fact that we have talked over and over with 5 directions from Somalia, from Eritrea, from Arab Emirates, and from vicious militia, FANO, and also from the IB Defense Forces. I don't call it Ethiopian Defense Forces for the reason that Ethiopian Defense Forces cannot unleash such kind of atrocity of rape, torture, burn, destruction, looting. So this is a deliberate an army that has been descended on Tigray to destroy our survival and humanity as a people of Tigray. So, and what we have seen on the other side is, especially since the Mililik ascending to power, they tried to create the empire by assimilating the Amharization. In my high school, when I was in high school, and many of us, we have to pass Amharic in order to join universities and other areas. And also the language has to be officially suppressed, or other nationalities that they were not able to communicate and write on their own, especially in Tigrayans. Even we are well established script before the Amharization of Ethiopia. So at this stage, I will say Ethiopia is a failed state in terms of many historical incidents, and also the making of Derg, and also the making of this current immature young leader. What he done to Ethiopia is beyond repairable. Coming back to the war, I think what we have to talk about is especially the incredible turnaround against Abiy Ahmed. His atrocity against Tigray is sending a shiver down to the spine of his supporters in diaspora, even in Ethiopia. They're very fast, stunning, high speed, and very scientific military agility, and also discipline is contributing a lot. I mean, as I have said earlier, I mean, those young kids, young professionals have at least experienced atrocity in war of their neighbors, their families. With this in mind, because they have discipline and they have a purpose, that's what they are winning, not only in terms of fighting the enemy, which is living at times all those modern weaponaries without a fight. At times also they fight for a few movements. But the bottom line we are talking about is that what will be Tigray's future in terms of, what will happen after all this. is a question that we are trying to answer. I think it seems to me premature in terms of what's going to happen to Tigray, because still there is a lot of dynamics going on. As Dr. Galaudius has suggested, State Department has its own, and also Europeans has their own, and also the African continent, as if sleeping giant, they might have their own
እሺ
of what is to be done.
ኢንተርቪው እንደዳሒዘ ሳይበር ፓወር ኣሎ
So
ንሕር ዘይደቂስካ ክድውለልካ ድሓር
Go ahead.
okay, thank you, Mike. So I think if we have to conclude, because Bisrat has said so much in terms of the failure of Ethiopia in many ways, because we don't have to advance something that has been done over and over to find a new result, and it didn't work for the last 100 years. So what is the future of Ethiopia and Tigray? It is worth mentioning and discussing. But from the reality on the ground, I think the Tigrayan people had enough after 100 years of war, after 100 years of rape, torture, loot, with many different attempts, we were able to survive in many ways. But this time, our survival has been questioned by other Ethiopian elites as well. I mean, look at it. You know, it really, when Tigray, when the vicious militia, Fano, and the Eritrean forces are advancing towards Mekelle and capture Tigray, the cheers, the dance in the streets of DC, in the streets of London, as if Tigray is part of Ethiopia. And now,
Sorry, let me interrupt you there. That's why I want us to stay on. I think what Dr. Gladius brought up is I'm really interested on the topic, because I think he just brought it as a scenario. He's not necessarily saying that's what's going to happen, but I think I really actually like his scenario, because he's got two more he wants to share with us. But I also want us to shorten some of the answers. So my question for you, I didn't get a chance to ask you, is based on Dr. Gladius' thought process that he shared with us, the possibility that could happen, what are we possibly going to see on behalf of the people of Tigray as Tigrayan Americans? What should we prepare for if that scenario were to be reality, is I guess my question for you, Mr. Berkat. I apologize for interrupting you.
No problem. I mean, I try to answer in a way that I think we are in the midst of war still. But what I agree with you and with Dr. Galaudius is having a different scenarios and options. It will help to educate the people of Tigray, as well as Tigrayans in diaspora, for that matter. At times, we are very emotionally, because what's happened to our Tigray. And we should not be carried out by our emotion, but by reason and scientific facts. What is good for us in the light of the current world atmosphere in 21st century. So we have to be mindful. It is, because we are not angry, because this is what happened to us, and we don't want to live in Ethiopia, and we want to abandon Ethiopia once and for all. There is a process on that. There is a process on that in the light of a 21st century current world order. And especially, Europeans and Americans have too much to say in the light of what choice we have to make. So even though I like the idea of entertaining such options, but also we have to be mindful, the actors in our region, and also some international pressure, whether it's coming from United States or IMF and European powers. So I really like to defer the idea that only we have to have three options. Why not? 5? Why not 6? Why not 7? So I think our main focus should be educating the people, whatever choice they have to make. That will be the focus that I really like to entertain as an idea.
Sure. No, I think, I'm with you, but I really, so I'm going to go back to Dr. Gladios. I'm going to have you unmute yourself. I had to immediately apologize while we were discussing when you had a call. So it is very fascinating. I genuinely like the scenario. I'm eagerly waiting to hear the other scenarios, that possibility. But my question, Dr. Gladios, is should Tigray be obligated to Western pressure when those of us in the diaspora cried for help for 7 months? I say 7 months because at the end of 7 months, most of Tigray became liberated because of the heroes that Mr. Barakat just described of Tigray. So my question to you, before you bring us to the next two possible scenarios that you will share with us, is should Tigray leadership, should the people of Tigray, including those of us in the diaspora, should we be obligated to a Western pressure that was not there for us when our people were massacred, to go into a route to make a federal system, possibility of having a system that may include not just Eritrea, but possibly even Djibouti, Somalia, both south and north of Somalia? If that was to be an actual proposal that the U.S. actually is concerned about China and other actors in the Horn of Africa, and the U.S. is willing to invest billions of dollars in the Horn of Africa, they were already giving Ethiopia roughly about $1 billion. Should we approach this beyond cautious, or should we really think about Israel building a nation in Tigray? Maybe that part you don't have to answer, obviously, because I don't want to put you on the spot. But should we possibly consider to build a nation if the people of Tigray choose so, and build a military, which the nation's already built based on Mr. Bisrat, but strong military, and have neighbors and allies to work with, but focus on Tigray and Tigray only as Tigrayans and Tigrayan Americans? Sorry, my question is broader, but it's more the focus should it be on Tigray, and should we be obligated to answer to political pressure from the West?
Very interesting. By the way, before I go on, by way of proposing Mr. Mike Tigray, you have to have a control. You should control us when we three of us talk, okay? Or if I'm talking too much, you have to say something. That's your job. You're a moderator.
Thank you.
And we have to respect that too. Because I always do it in the academia. We do 15 minutes, boom, dun, dun, dun. That's how we go. Anyway, your point is very interesting. But, whenever I entertain ideas in this kind of forum, something flashes back because I think politically, in the context of political science, in the context of international global relations, in the context. That's how I view it. So the Tigray phenomenon is not going to be different from other nations. Mr. Bisrat put it very well. Tigray is a nation, yes, no problem. But Tigray is like many other nations in the third world, developing nations. The only nation that escaped the scrutiny, the control of the Western powers is China, period. There is no nation in the southern half of our planet that has determined its own fate. Brazil tried it many times. They punished it several times. This is the problem now. So we have to make a choice between an objective condition which is the control of the entire world by the Western powers, and the subjective condition, which is our wish, what we want to be. Okay, like all of you. I am a Tigrayan too. I love Tigray. I love my people. I struggled for them. Long time ago, when I was not even matured enough, when I was a 9th grader, I established a Tigrayan association of Tigrayan youth. Long time ago. It's always in the DNA of the Tigrayan people. Tigrayan people are very strong people, but that strength didn't come just like that. It's a long history of civilization and culture and what have you. Okay? So now coming back to your question, should we operate outside the scrutiny of the Western powers? Yes, we can do it. We can try it. But we have to make a serious consideration. We have to be tactful too. We have to be politicians too. Okay? It's not by confronting the Western powers. You have to handle them diplomatically, while at the same time you promote your own national interests or Tigrayan interests. Okay? So that's why actually I brought 3 options long time ago in the Tigray Global Advocacy Group, where I am, where Mr. Bisrat is, where Mr. Barakat is. We have so many other intelligent people in that group as well. So we came up, we've been digesting this thing, by the way, for many months now. What's going to be the future of Tigray? So I said, okay, let me put 3 options. The first option is the Tigray forces. This is a long time ago, about 7 months ago, I proposed actually, but it was repeated many times. Tigray forces, along with other Ethiopian forces, kick out the Abiy Ahmed government or destroy the Abiy Ahmed government and install a federal government. This is one option. It's good to have options. If you are a political scientist, you come up with many options, not just 3, but many. But you don't come with only one option, by the way, even if you want to be completely independent. The second option is Tigray is going to have greater autonomy. Okay? Greater autonomy. And others could have autonomy as well. And then those autonomous states, new states, are going to be connected confederally. Confederation actually are independent states, but they come together by mutual interest. Those mutual interests are manifested many times in defense and trade. There could be other things as well, but it's mainly defense and trade. These are confederal states. The third option is that Tigray become completely independent and declare the Republic of Tigray, period. Okay? And I emphasized many times, I don't have any illusion, I don't harbor any illusion on the independence of Tigray. If the people of Tigray want to be completely independent and establish a republic, I am going to be there at the forefront. I will support them. I'm going to be for them. But it has to be via referendum. Via referendum means that people have to have a voice this time. Because until this moment, the fate of Tigray was decided by political groupings, okay, by elites, by educated people like myself, because we always come up with a proposal, an agenda, and then say, this is for you, to the people. But this time, the people have to have a choice. This time, the people of Tigray should be given a chance to actually say, we need to be this. We need to be independent. We need to be whatever. Okay? So these are the three choices I put. However, with respect to independent Tigray that we are going to explore in depth next time, because we might not have that much time tonight, I also propose, because I teach global political economy, so I know how nations are surviving in the global market. It's a very complex, complicated thing. It's not simple. Okay? Because until this period, like I told you, the economy, the great economy, the only challenging power now is China, period. Even Japan, it used to be the second economy, is now the third economy. Okay? But Japan escaped a long time ago, 1868. The other ones are just faltering. India and Brazil and all those things are relatively okay, but out of Basrat mentioned earlier, Africa could not do anything. Yeah, very true. The reason behind neo-colonialism, they are still colonized. They have a flag waving independence only. Economically, they are not independent. You know what they say in Kenya? They have a saying in Kenya, in Swahili, Uhuru wa Bandera. Uhuru means freedom. Bandera means flag. It's only flag independence they got. Okay? So you can become a republic, no problem. But what do you need in order to compete in the global economy? I'm not objecting to grand independence, because some people can have a different thing. Because even Mike yourself said that when I say something, it blew your mind. I don't want that to happen to you. But we have to be realistic. Okay, I will go for Tigray independence because we have suffered so much. Tigrayan people have suffered so much. They have to try their own thing now. I like that idea. I have no problem with that. But in order to be successful, because you know what I said last time to one friend of mine? Okay, if Tigray is going to be independent, blah, blah, whatever is going to happen, I'm going to go pack and go to Tigray because I want to contribute something for the people of Tigray. Okay, because if we just talking here, we got to do something about it. Now, last time we actually were discussing here with Mr. Bisrat last Friday, I believe. What do nations need in order to compete in the global economy? It's very complicated, but I'm going to bring only the ones that people can understand easily. Okay. In order to be successful, a nation, a new nation especially, needs skilled manpower, number one. You have to have skilled manpower. You know, the APRDF, to their credit, they actually created so many technical and vocational schools so that we can have more skilled people in Ethiopia. But look what happened now. So you need skilled manpower, number one. Without skilled manpower, you cannot do anything as a modern nation. Number two, you need capital. Capital. this controlling power like Western Europe and America and Canada and what have you. They have huge capital that has dominated the world. But capital does not mean money, because people have this narrow understanding of capital. Capital means the whole industrial enterprise, including the land and what have you, the machinery, everything. You need capital. Otherwise, you cannot change the country if you don't have capital. The third thing that very much associated with the two things, skilled manpower and capital, is technology. Now we have technology. Some of it is transferable. Like, for instance, cell phones, telephone, television, and what have you. Transferable. That's okay. But some of them, like several things like, what do you call this, whatever energy they have, and others and others. They are not transferable. They do it on purpose. In order to transfer a technology in the United States, you need the permission of the Department of Commerce. Okay? Otherwise, you're not going to transfer it. Conductivity and others and others.
Patent, you mean patent?
What?
Patent.
Yeah, you need that. However, you cannot transfer it, as a matter of fact. Okay? So the fourth thing that you need is resources. What do we have? For instance, for Tigray, I suggested a long time ago in my book that for Tigray, the best thing to go is via agriculture, via mining, because there is a potential there, and via tourism. Okay, the industry is going to come with that package. Okay, with respect to resources, there are so many minerals beneath the ground in Tigray, but excavating and processing and bringing it into the market is going to ask a huge capital. It's not easy. But for your information, let me tell you this. This was actually a study paper made by Dr. Johannes Hideggo. He said he is an archaeologist. He is actually a geologist. He said there is 2 billion tons of fuel potential in Tigray. He made that study. That in order to excavate, take it out, and bring it to the market is going to take a huge capital. Okay? So you have to need these 4 things I just said so that you become a viable economy. A viable economy. In that, of course, the educated people have to contribute to do something about it. We cannot simply say Tigray become independent. Okay, fine. We love that idea. But we have to be successful too as a nation. Okay? So that's what I want to say. I think I have answered your question, I guess.
You have, absolutely. So I know that we brought in the discussion. I'm fascinated. I don't think we're going to do Tigrinya, unfortunately, because we don't have a lot of time. So I want us to have a shorter discussion, if you guys don't all mind, because I would hate to interrupt the amazing discussion that you guys are doing. To Dr. Gladios's credit, as I listened to you, I actually looked it up. In 2014, there was a Canadian company, precisely to your credit, that have discovered in Tigray that included actually gold, copper, silver, and zinc mineral resources, and just what you describe as well. So for those of you who are listening to the history, obviously, that Dr. Gladios just broadly explained, all you have to do is Google Tigray resources. So my question, I'm going to go around one more time. I would like you guys to shorten the answer, is we have fascinating, amazing folks from military to academia and whatnot. So I see a problem that none of us have raised that I would like to each one of you honestly and openly answer the question, which is, when it comes to the current fighting, our amazing senior military veterans from the US, from Europe, from Tigray, from throughout Ethiopia, fled to Tigray and said, we are going to die with our people, for our people. They form an amazing TDF force from all wake of life. But I know that the majority are young people. In the diaspora, we protested together, but for the first time, young people were given opportunity to lead, the chance, the organizing, and all these things. Politically, I feel there is a gap between you guys and the young generation. So my question is, and Dr. Gladios already mentioned it, he wants to go back to Tigray and provide services. What should we be doing to bring in to the young, brilliant Tagaru who fought diplomatically, politically throughout the world, that many of them actually may not have traveled to Tigray to see the land of their parents and grandparents. What should we do to bring the gap and to educate and to have them become politicians to the young freedom fighters in Tigray while we separate politic from military? So I'm going to start with Mr. Visserat. I was kind of explaining in a sense, but my question is, we have a gap. The young generation politically, we don't know many of the history that you guys know. We need you guys. Without you guys, we won't be able to survive politically and many of the elements. That's why I got so excited and even shivered when Dr. Gladius just came out with the first idea, possibly that could happen. And I'm just, the more he explains it, the more it makes sense to me. But we haven't done this kind of work together in the past. So I feel that we have a gap to close. So how can we close the gap that we do have? I'll go with Mr. Visrat, and then we'll go to Mr. Burka, and we'll come back to you, Dr. Gladius. If you guys don't mind, make it like a little shorter. So
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. That's fine. Thank you so much. Again, before I answer, I will have a quick answer for that. But I would ask my colleague, my scholarly leader, Dr. Dr. Galadius, to include in your
Options.
No, not the options. The criteria to build the nation.
Okay.
Actually, that has become the central point to my understanding,
Which is
the base for building a viable economy or a civilization. To build an economy, and an economy should be the social base, and that social base has to be very important. You will not comfortable if I say that. That has to be a nation for the basis of building a viable economy. Go to, I know that all nations are the same, according to you. For me, it's not. But all nations in Europe, I want you to research North, South Korea, Japan, China. These are the same people. They're not nationalities. So the basis for building an economy is the social base itself. If the social base is a combination of people, you're not going to build any economy. That's my understanding. So I want you to include. I know it will come to nation building. Nation building has become a very hectic, problematic job in the past 50 years, 70 years. So social base is the central point to build an economy. Maybe skill power comes next, and then resource is secondary, very much. And then to go to your answer, my friend Mickey, yes, one thing that we should not be confused at this point is after this genocidal war, every Tigrayan child will be aware very much in different course because as Dr. Galadio said, it is in our blood just to serve for Tigray. So the children, the Tigrayans, wherever they are now, they will be aware and they will be tuned themselves to educate themselves and to learn more about Tigray. This is a good ground. The war itself has brought us a good ground. And the second thing is, I suggest there is a cycle. the corrupt political system, and that cycle has to be broken. We have to break it. That cycle is it doesn't allow people to entertain different opinions. It doesn't allow almost the right to listen and the right to have a different opinion. That cycle in Tigray, in politics in Tigray, has been going wrong way, wrong direction. That cycle has to be broken. This war's mission, after this war is completed, this cycle has to be broken, and then our children will get really a good education. And there has to be an institution, several institutions that I would suggest. Number one, a military museum has to be established in Tigray, which a lot of scholars can build it. And in this, our children will learn a lot. And then we do not have any institution or that think that we can think in our mind. Politically, we are not good. We are a great nation, but politically, we have never been good in this situation. That need to be discussed further and more. So the one important thing that we need to build is a military institution, a military museum that the world can visit it, that our children can learn it, and with a lot of historical facts. But the political facts, the other stuffs, this has to be considered as of this time. That's my suggestion, the way we teach our children. And then our curriculum, our school textbooks has to be restructured to teach our people, at least from the perspectives of history. And I believe there are many scholars like Dr. Gladius. This has to be restructured, reformed again, reproduced. We have to make those things. If we do those things, if we break the corrupt political cycle, if we go build a military museum that define us, our history from long time to today, and if we reproduce our educational system and textbooks, we will be fine, to my understanding.
Thank you, Mr. Atabarakat. I'm going to just make it very quick and simple. We need to make a political space for the young generation. I've seen it already in the diaspora. It will be a great mistake for Tigray leadership to not include the young generation throughout the world, including those of us in the diaspora. If I'm incorrect, I am always humble to learn. What is your view, whether or not from Mekelle to Washington, D.C., throughout the world, we need more young leaders to be allowed to have space in the political arena. And just what Mr. Barakat described, Tigray doesn't lack fighters. Tigray doesn't lack educated people. But Tigray has had trouble. When limited people get in power, they forget the people who put them in power. Sometimes we are more concerned about the neighbors, meaning the other tribes, the other people within Ethiopia, before we take care of our own people or own home. So my question for you, sir, is to avoid such catastrophe in the future, we need young people deep in politics and leadership. And our we ready in the diaspora, and will Tigray leadership be ready to accept the young generation and to listen to the will of the people of Tigray?
Thank you, Mike. You brought a very fundamental question for survival of, our Tigray as a nation and as the people. First of all, it is nice to recognize the problems that had existed. And having said that, there is a need, a generational gap between the political leaders, especially at the helm of the power, and also the new generation. There is a silo on each sector, and those silos are the one that really kept us apart. Even to talk about an opportunity has been as a political process or some kind of political unleash on those individuals who demand for it. But Tigray, that kind of Tigray doesn't really exist from now onward, because the Tigray that we know has been dying from different sectors. It's not only party officials that they are dying. It's not members of TPLF that are dying. It is the whole people of Tigray dying in this process to create a nation that we'll have to see. So, indeed, it should, and we should fight for it. So far, we haven't invested on those young, especially I'm talking about the diaspora. Bless their heart. After they have seen such brutal atrocity, they cannot sit idle. They tried so much, leaving their jobs, leaving their schools, protesting on the streets of Europe, on the streets of North America, in the streets of their state where they live respectfully. So, in a short, we should. It is we should know it creates a political decay. We have to infuse this new blood, to say the least, to create a very ideal political process that is very inclusive to all Tigrayans. Otherwise, we will have a political decay in one leadership. What I vision in Tigray from now onward is where different ideas are entertained, where people can speak freely what they think about the future of Tigray, and also different parties coming and working together on a very vital for survival of Tigray. Of course, this takes time. All things could not be done all at once, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel for this political process to be mature, to be entertained. Otherwise, we will fall in the same trap that we have experienced in the last 10 years or 15 years. It should be, people have to speak freely and choose their political destiny in which groups they want to join, whether it is a civic organization, whether it is a political organization. To say the least, what we have done, I just want to mention just a little bit here. Hydri Civic Society internationally is to encourage that kind of political process. And by doing so, we had contributed something by creating leaders like Mahari Johannes and others, and also to have more political choices on the last election. So I like to see more political organizations mature through this process and also join a lot young generation like you, Mike, and others from the diaspora and also from inside. So this should be the platform for all Tigrayans that should be inclusive and have the young generation some opportunities to lead and to learn. That's what should be a succession plan. Every political organization, they have a succession plan to give an opportunity for the young, well-educated, and start the grooming process and leadership experience as we started from the street to mature to a political process.
Thank you, Mr. Burkett. So my final question before you guys do a closing summary, Dr. Gladius.
Okay, very good.
Not if whether or not you're gonna go to Tigray, but you will go to Tigray. We will use your brain to educate many young Tagaro. So my question for you, sir, is
yes, thank you. I got it.
Thank you.
By the way, Mike, I like your style. I like your ideas.
Thank you.
Okay. So anyway, I'm going to come to that quickly to the question you raised. However, since Bisrat always provokes, he comes with many ideas.
I love the idea. I love you guys' ideas.
It's a temptation.
Which is why I'm going to postpone.
Anyway, let me tell you this. What he said, social base, I have taken it for granted. It goes without saying. Without social base, you cannot do anything. It's always considered, actually. When you do whatever you cook, you have onion, you chop onion. Onion is always there. Social base is like onion, okay? But anyway, I told you I'm going to send you my book. But he failed. I was going to send you this book, Mr. Bisrat. I told you to exchange. I have done about this, about all these countries called the tigers and what have you. Okay? So do that. I'm going to send it to you. But anyway, coming back to the question now, I actually had, I don't want to say vision because it could be like whatever. But I knew this is 16 years ago. 16 years ago, I considered to give direction to our youth, to the young blood, to Tigrayans, because we are getting older. We're going to go. They're going to actually take over. But they should take over by connecting themselves to Tigray first, by knowing their culture, by articulating themselves in Tigrinya. Okay? Otherwise, they're going to be lost in the diaspora. So I have written a book called, this is in Tigrinya now. This is 16 years ago. Okay? So it says cultures that we must preserve and reject to give direction to the youth. This was promoted apparently 16 years ago in Seattle. I give credit to Mr. Barakat. He was the one who promoted for me in the Tigray Club in 16 years ago. But now, to make it more concrete though, what my friends probably don't know, and what Mike probably don't know, let me introduce you with an organization that is actually doing what Mike asked. There is an organization, a non-profit organization. It's not a political organization. It's called Tigray Communities Forum. Okay? Tigray Communities Forum has been around for a long time now. I am involved in that organization too. So actually, I give credit to two people, especially in that Tigray. We are many, but the two people that are dynamic, that are leading the Tigray Community Forum are Mulugeta Gabru in
Atlanta.
You know him, right?
Oh, yeah.
Very good. And Futsum Rahan Taka as well in Las Vegas. These are great people. I love them. And we help them, actually, myself and Professor Zarai from Chicago, as well. We help them. So what we do with this, we teach young people the culture of Tigray, geography of Tigray, history of Tigray. I have presented myself all these three things actually in Tigray. But the major challenge is most of them don't speak Tigrinya. 4 years ago, they had a conference in Denver. The one person among the young Tigrayans, only one person that speaks Tigrinya was Dr. Tsaga. She's a medical doctor. Can you imagine all these people? They don't speak Tigrinya. How are they going to be connected? So now we've started teaching them. Now we have education committee. Where I am is identity committee. There's education committee. Marg and others are leading that committee. So we started with history. They're going to teach them the alphabets so that they can know what they look like, because ultimately they have to write down their names with their language as well. In order to do that, however, about 2 years ago, there was a proposal from the Tigray Communities Forum that 70 of these young people go to Tigray so that they can get exposure. Because when they go there, they're going to see so many things. They're going to see the tradition of Tigray, the way the people dress, the way the people talk, the way the people eat, whatever. And they're going to see historical sites as well. But because of the war, they could not go. Because of COVID too, they could not do it. Okay? So we have an organization, actually, you should know. If you know Mulgeta Gobru, you can connect with Mike, you can connect with him as well. He can give you so many information about that. It was a proposal. I mentioned in that conference, by the way, what they call this young Tigrayan woman festival, Ashenda. I mentioned Ashenda, and then people were fascinated because they didn't know what Ashenda is. And what do? It's a festival of women, especially young women. And incidentally, I don't know how many years, maybe Barakat can remember. How many years ago when your daughter went to, the first time she went to Tigray?
I think it is 12 years ago, Ashenda.
Okay, 12 years ago. So what I've done is she went there with her mom. She was dressed in the Ashenda thing. She had the hairstyle, the gamme hairstyle. And we put a picture of her and I posted it on my website. People were asking me left and right. The history of Ashenda, I wrote the history of Ashenda first. An example, the daughter of Mr. Barakat. And everybody was asking about her and about her adventures in Tigray and what have you. Okay? So exposure is important, but we are educating these people so that you know. Okay? Otherwise, who is going to substitute us? Who is going to take over? We need those people. We need those people for sure.
Thank you, Dr. Gladius. With that, I would have to ask one last question in Tigrinya to each one of you, because we have promised the audience that we were going to do Tigrinya version, but you also brought in very amazing discussion, all of you. I appreciate you. That book, you're offering to Mr. Basrat, but I could probably use it more than he can use it. So when I see you next time somewhere, I'll connect with you. I know I have your cell phone, so I'll reach out to you directly. But as you know now, أنا لما أنت مالت تي بإنجليزيانا خمسين الزاجة جو خمسين جوار الناس قيلة بقى عينكم تعميتكم أتيكم من تأيتياك حتى نايلكم تي الزاجة جو تي خمسين جواركم مرستات نمهاب بتعمي خبرات يهاب اللي يبي المجمر تا كاو قصي لجين ب حونا تقال لاي بالسرات يخجمر مجمر تا نهاجر كا هيوت كافر ريمكا انت متكوخ موتيه تصنع حصن نحيلكا نهزب تግራይ نهزب ኢትዮጵያ አገልግልካ ካው ኻን ሒዚ ፖለቲካል አናሊስት ንኾንካ እናወፃኻ ብከምዚ ሚድያታት ትምህርቲ ተምህረና ትረድአና ዘለኻ እዚ ይጎዲልና ነይሩ ንሕና ተጋሩ ስለዚዩ እዚ ንክንቅፅለሉ ብኣኻትኩም ንሕና እውን ኣብ ጎንኹም ኮይና ብሓደ ክንሰርሕ ኣነ ደስ ይብለኒ ጥራይ ዘይኮነስ ዝግጁ ምዃነይ ሓውኩም እየ ኣብ ጎንኹም ማእገርኩም ኮይነ ንስኻትኩም ከዓ ንኣይ ዝበለፀ ፅላል ትኾንኒ ዓንዲ ኮይንኩም ካባኻትኩም ኣነ ዋላ ሓደ ግዜ ገጭገጭ ተበልና መናእሰይ ቆልዓሲያ ይጎይ እሞ ኣይቅድምን ይብሉ ወለድና ይበሃል ሓደ ግዜ ትግራይ ክኸተለኹ ኣነ እውን እዚያት እየ ካብ ህዝቢ ትግራይ ኣነ ቀደስ ዝብለኒ መብዛሕትኡ ግዜ ክኸተለኹ ኢትዮጵያ ትግራይ እየ ይዕርፍ ነይረ መብዛሕትኡ ግዜ ኣዲስ ኣበባ ከይደ ካብኡ ንመቐለ ካብኡ ናብ ዘለኽዎ ቦታ ማለት እዩ እና እዚ እናበልኩ እንታይ ክብል እየ ብዙሕ ሕማቕ ርኢና ኣብ 8 9 ወርሒ እዚ ሙሉእ ብዙሕ ድማ ሓደ ዘረባታት ወፂና ብሚድያ ንዛረቦ እውን እናተቆልበ ዋ ዶክተር ግላዲዮስ ከምዚ ኮይሎም ሚኪ ከምዚ ኮይሉ ብስራት ከምዚ ኮይሉ በረካት ከምዚ ይመፅእ እዩ ግን ሳላኸም ዝገበርና ተዓዊትና ኣነ ሱዳን ከይደ ከምኡ ግን ንእስተይ እትው ኢለ ምስቶም ጀጋና ኣሕዋትና ዝሰርሕዎ ዘለዉ ስራሕ ርየ መፅየ ዝቐረባ ግዜ እዚ እናበልኩ ግን ህዝብና ሒዙ እንተኾነ ህዝብና ብዙሕ ስቃያት ኣሎ እዩ እና እዚ እናበልኩ ሓገዝ ብዙሕ የድልየና እዩ ሓደ ኮመንት እናርአኹ ነይረ ማሰጅ እውን እናልኣኹለይ ነይሮም እዮም ኣነ ዝመፅኽዎ ቅንያት እዚ ሕፅረት እኒሄና ፀገም እኒሄና ኣሕዋትና ይሳቀዩ ኣለዉ ብዙሕ ሰብ ኣብ ሱዳንና ኣብ ትግራይ ዝኒሄ ህዝቢ ትግራይ ሓያል ሽግር እኒሄና እዩ ኣሕዋት እዚኡ ኣሕዋትና ኣይንረሳዕ ሓገዝ ዘድሊ ብሓፂር ግዜን ንነዊሕ ግዜን ብዙሕ እዩ ንዓድና ዶክተር ግላዲዮስ ብእንግሊዝኛ ብደንብ ዝገለፅካዮ ናይ ሃገር ንምዕባል ኢኮኖሚ ከመይ ጌርካ ከም ዝብርክት ብዙሕ ነገር ተንቲንካ እየኻ እዚ እናበልኩ ግን ብመጀመርታ ናቶ ብስራት እቲ ናይ ቃልስና ንሪኦ ኣለና ትግራይ ዳርጋ ሙሉእ ብሙሉእ ዋላ ዘይተዓወተት ተዓዊታስ ንሕና ድሕሪ ሒዚ ከምቲ ዶክተር ግላዲዮስ ዝበሎ ሬፈረንደም መፅኡ ብዓንቀፅ 39 ናይ ኢትዮጵያ ኮንስቲቱሽን ኣነ መብዛሕትኡ ልቢ እንግሊዝኛ ጉግል እናገበርኩ ዘንቦ መብት ስለ ዘለዋ ብኡ መብታ ግን ምጭብርባር ከይመፅእ እቶም ፖለቲካል ኤሊት ኣምሓራ ንብሎም ናይ ባዕልና ፖለቲካል ኤሊት ዝኾኑ ከየስሓቱና ከየጋግዩና እውን ብሓደ ኮይና ተኸባቢርና እናተስማዕማዕና ይህን ምሂን ኢልና ኩሉ ግዜ ንሕና እንታይ ይበሃል ቆልዓ እንተኮይኑ ኣታስቕበል ገለታት ኣታ ከምዚ ነበል ይበሃል ነይሩ ሎሚ ግን ንሱ ገዲፍና ኣነ ደስ ዝበለኒ እንታይ እዩ ይህን ምሂን ምባል ሰሚዕና በቃ ኣብ ሰላማዊ ሰልፊ ተወፃናስ ዓብይ ንእሽተይ ምባል ገዲፍና እዮ ናይ መጨረሻ እዩ ደስ ኢሉና እዚ ክንቅፅል ግን ምስ ሰብ ትግራይ ዝኒሄ ህዝብና ከይንባታተን ሓደ ኣሕዋትና ሒዞም እንተኾነ ሒዚ የምናልባት እቲ ናይ ቀደም ዝፀንሐ ባህልታት ንረስዕ ዘይኮነስ ሓደ ናብ ዘይ ቦታና ዘእተወና ሰይርና ንሱ ሓቅነት ፅሩይ ዘረባ ውሽጥና ብባዕልና እናተማየጥና ንክንፈትሖ የድልየና እዩ ይብል ብናተይ ግምት እዚ እናበልኩ ግን ሓደ ግዜ ኣነ ተናዲደ ንተጋድላይ ብስራት ሓወይ ሓደ ነገር ተለዮ ኣብ በይነይ ክእርመኒ ውሽጢ ከመኽረኒ ደስ ይብለኒ እዚያት ኣይለመድናየን ፀኒሕና ተጋሩ እዚ ንክነስተኻኽል እዚ ንክንለምድ ግን ኣነ ምናልባት ካብኻትኩም ብዙሕ እናተምሃርኩ ስለ ዘለኹ ኣብዚዩ ነቲ ኣድየንስና ብእንግሊዝኛ እናሰምዐና ዝፀንሐ ነናይ ባዕልኩም ቃል ሓደ 5 ደቂቃ ጌርኩም ብትግርኛ ሕፅር ኣቢልኩም ንትግራይ እንታይ እዩ ዘዋፅኣ ንህዝብና ነታ ቦታ ሒዚ ኢትዮጵያ እያ ዝኒያ ፈተና ክልል መንግስቲ ኣለና እምበር ኢትዮጵያ መንግስቲ የብልና ዲፕሎማ ኣምባሳደራት ንብል ሓደ ግዜ ትግራይ እኮ ኣምባሳደራት የብላን ኣምባሳደራት ድማ ኩልና ኢና ንሕና ምሁር ኮነ ዘይምሁር ኮነ ኣዶታት ኣቦታት መናእሰይ ኩልና ብሙልና ኣምባሳደር ኮይና ፅቡቅ ሰሪሕና ኢና ኣብዚ ግን ሓደ ግዜ ተወሰኑ ኢንዲቪጁዋላት ሃይጃክ ክገብሩ ሓደ ነገር ንባዕሎም ወይ ንክፍለጡ ድዩ ንሓደ ነገር ክጅምሩ ተለዉ ግን ንሱ ንባዕሉ እውን ነኦም እንተይደፋእና ነኦም እንተየባረርና ግደፉ ኣሕዋት ንስሓት ኣለና ኣብዚ ንስተኻኸል እናበልና እዚ ይህን ምሂን ናይ ብሓቂ ብፅርየት የድልየና እዩ ለ ኣነ ካባኻትኩም ፈሊጠ ማለት ዘይኮነስ ብናተይ በታ ካባኻትኩም ተምሃርክዋን ብዛ ወስትራን ሶሳይቲ ዝፈልጣ ፖለቲካል እውን መልሓስና መናእሰይ ዳያስፖራ ንእሽተ የብልሕ ስለ ዘበለትና ኣውታት ኢና እውን ሓደ ግዜ ድርቕ ኢልና ንዛረብ ኢና እሞ ንሱ ንኣና የመና እንታይ ሓዝኩም ፖለቲካሊ ሚድያ ብኩሉ ነገር دخيمنا صنحنا اينا نحنا تقارنا اوزيو خنصرحلو يدلينا ايونا اوزنا يوعلكم حساب جن نانا 5 دقائق عدلكوكم بليز سامرايز ناغوركم بسرات حونا تقالاي بتناي ميدا قرستات ريخاي اخا انتاي حيز خدس بيلكو الله قصيلنا خنتاي دس كبلنا ايو انتاي كن الرم كن مهارلنا الكا تتعصوا لنا على الحساب دس يبلني يعني لازم هذا ميت هذا لها بسرعه هاي
بتعمي ميكي تتلعلو زلها حتوتات بانجليزኛ يكون بتግርኛ بازيو بصبق اقراروا بتعمي زمسግነካ مهارايون كوني نقدمت انكر التبابعي بحقي العريه التبابعينا الله بابز حلفه شعت ورحي انكافتم اب ميدانا تግራይ ዝተጋደል كلهم 16 ዓመት ዝበለጸ ትምህርቲ ዝረኸቡ ኩሉ عم انجوي نغورو ግዜ ወላይ ይኹን ብጣዕሚ ከቢድ ቃልሲ حلفنا ኢና ናይ ህዝቢ ትግራይ ሓድነት ከዓ ኣኹር ኣብ ህይወተይ ካፍቲ ዕሩ ዘኹርዕኒ ከቢድ ነገር عبي ነገር ካብዚ ህዝቢ እዚ ምፍጣርና ብጣዕሚ ጽቡቕ እዩ ግን ግርማ ሞጎስ መጨረሻ ከዓ ጽቡቕ ነገር ክንገብረሉ ከዓለና ንኽብል ሓዲሩለ እዩ ነቲ ቅድሚ ሕዚ ዝተቃለስ ኩሉ ብህይወተይ ምትራፈይ እውን እዚ ክርኢ ዝገበረኒ ብዝኾነ ይኹን መለክዒ ኣብ ትሕቲ ዝኾነ ይኹን ኩነታት ብጣዕሚ بهوت صنع كل خمس جنوخ إليه نزي كريئي مالتي إذا حجز مصع خناتات من الوقت زبط حنا تقعت رزيم كوني خليو وينون جن نصبق نجارون كوني خليو بهالي ناب صبق من قدي ناب صبق عبي نجار كلتي في خسرة جرنا خلاهم عرض خمس ولا تسجم كي دقمنا خنقبر نخلينا أتي دخمتات زموتسو خا نابزي حدقا زي زو دقنا طرح بدقز مصصقم اينوره ناي وشطنا ونيو قسلنا نريوخ نخوني امبر ناي وشطنا ونيو عقم نيرنا حيل نيرنا بوليتيكاناون بوليتيكانا جن سلطنا يكونن نسرح نيرنا اتي اب سرح زنبرسب اب سلطان زنبرسب سرح يسرح نيرو اي سرحنا يبلنايون جن بوسرو بوليتيكا تبصرون ولا حجون سبس بخي الزارب يفرح يدنقص كابلا لما عند جميرو تقراواي نمانم كدنقص يولدن نمانم كفر حكا يولدن السنع هذا فرار حكا حماقي بتاعي كابا خان تحت مخانف تفضل لك اخ فرار حزا حسب
أمانغو يقرص الله
نيستيك فري on the network
اره حجه
بس الله عايز
اتي زفرح نجر يلا فرحي انتايو البوليتيكا ناي تግራይ بوليتيكا بقلت خزاربكم زدل ان ناتينا نايب عليه حزب الدحر حجي كندت زخرع كله زاكل رئيته يبقى استخال الله زولا نجر الله بوليتيكا تግራይ بوليتيكا هذا ناي متففاء تاريخي يزولو ناي مسافنتي زمن تاريخ مسافنتي تግራይ كمتي ناي واحد مرحنا زولو ما يكونن حربኛታት يوم نيروم بهرتኛታት يوم كع نيروم كلاي كع تدغاغامي نوعلم كواغو خولو نهزبهم نا حشكرنا ذاتهم ስለዚህ ناي تግራይ بوليتيكا نحشكرنا بوليتيكا وني نيرو ስለዚህ بقعته ينورون مالتي حجون ازي كابزي كنوصي زلنا كابزي موصا بتعم وسان اب تاريخ اتي انتاي لمولو تزحلفه نزخنتاتنا حجريهم the brave nation number 2 او علم كابزلو تبايلو كابز عب نغير اندالو تايدا يدا تورك بوليتيكا جن ዓብይ ጥንቃቐ ዝሓትት ማለት እዩ ብጣዕሚ ድሕረት ከቢድ ድሕረት ዘለዎ ሕብረተሰብ ምዃንና ከዓ ንፈልጥ ኣለና እንታይ እያ እታ ድሕረት ናይ ሓሳብ ኣፈላላይ ዘይቕበል እንተደኣ ኮይኑ ናብ ሕሽክርና ገፁ ዘዝንበለ ኣተሓሳስባ ዘለዎ ምሁር ይኹን ዘይተማህረ ፓርቲ ይኹን ፓርቲ ዘይኮነ እሱ ማለት ድሑር ማለት እዩ ኣብ ፖለቲካ ብቑዕ ኣይኮነን ከም ሶሳይቲ ናብ ብሕጊን ብዲሞክራሲ ምስ ዲሞክራሲ መሰረት ዝገበረ ናይ ፍትሒ መንጎኛነት ዘረጋገፀ ብሕጊ ዝምራሕ ሕብረተሰብ እዩ ስልጡን ኣብ ዓለም ፖለቲካሊ እዚ ንክንገብር ናይ ሓሽከር ፖለቲካ ናይ ፈራሕ ፖለቲካ ናይ ተኸታሊ ፖለቲካ
ميت كون كان لها بسرات سوري
معلقة ميت جركة
أينها أخوان إننا ناي تختالي ناي حشكرنا بوليتيكا مختال مالت ناي ولكت بوليتيكا مالتي I hope تزحلف سمعهم تكونوا انتهي دا أي زد لي النازل مالتي ناي حسب أفعلالاي بمسرته نوزي زي يقبل من يوم فطر يترف ኣብ ሓደ ቤተሰብ ክነብር ኣይኽእልን ጎረቤትኩም ክኸውን ብቑዕ ኣይኮነን ይትረፍ መራሓኻ ክኸውን ማለት እዩ ይትረፍ ናይ ፖለቲካ ንትግራይ ኣይሙጥኑን ኣብዚ ዝሓለፉ 30 ዓመት ዝተረኣየ ናይ ትግራይ ፖለቲካ እኮ ንመሰልካ ምኽባር ማለት እያ ናይ ምስማዕ መሰልካ ናይ ምዝራብ መሰልካ ናይ ምምራፅ መሰልካ ናይ ምሕሳብ መሰልካ ናይ ምፅሓፍ መሰልካ ንኣኣ ዘይተኽብራ እንተ ደኣ ኮንካ ንስኻ ወሪድካ ሓሽከር ኢኻ ልኡኽ ኢኻ بقى عيكون كان ሕብረተሰብ ክትሃንጽ ክትህነጽ ኣይትኽእልን ማለት እዩ ነቲ ፖለቲከኛ ግን ነቲ መራሒ ነቲ ኢሊት ግን ፖለቲካ እንታይ እያ ንህዝቢ እሚኑ ዝሓዞ ፖሊሰብ ተግባር ከውዕል ምግባር ምእዛዝ ማለት እዩ እዚ ምፍላጡ ብቐጥዑ እጂ ክንድት ኣብ ፖለቲካ ክንድት ዘለና ድሕረት ንጣጣውን ዳሪጉና ጸኒሑ እንተይኮነ ይተርፍን ንሱ ክምርመር እዩ ንቕድሚት ኣብኡ ኸይንኣቱ ጥራሕ እየ ናተይ ምኽሪ ማለት እዩ ማንም ትግራዋይ ንማንም ናይ ፖለቲካ በዓል ስልጣን ክፈርሖ እንተተረኣዩ ካብዚ ዝዓቢ ውርደት ክነብር ኣይክእልን ካብዚ ሰዓት እዚ ማለት እዩ ንትመሰልካ ጥራሕኻ ክትኽብርን ክትፈርሕ ዘለካ እዩ ናተይ ምኽሪ ከም ተጋዳላይ መጠን ኣብ ተጋዳላይ እናሃለና እውን ተረኣዩ ፀገም እዚ ምስ ተወደቕ ቃልሲ እውን ፀገም ተረኣዩ ሕጂ ከዓ ክረአ ይኸውን እዩ ኢለ ግምቶ እየ ክረአ ግን በጭራሽ ዕድል ክህብ የብሉን I'm very بتعمي حبوس يم ناي ميكي تقربوا زلها بتعدمها تي ولدوت نايكا كمهارو لوز بهال نجر مزيو ناي أبنجا متقاس أبتقرأ يقول عن تاينا ولا يزعبي كم رأس قالوا لا خوينا خعبي زدلي هنا معجقنا يتقرأ ኣብ ብራዚል ከንታይና ወላ እዩ ዝዓቢ ፔለ ክኸውን እየ ምክንያቱም ኩዕሶ ፀወታ ኮይኑ ከማይ ከዓ ትኸውን ተባህሊ እንካኡ ግን ደርቲ ፖለቲክስ ስዕበካ ተኮይኑ ከዓ ኣብ ትግራይ እሱ ፀላኢኻ ማለት እዩ እሱ ናይ ባዕልካ ናይቲ ሕብረተሰብካ ፀላኢኻ ማለት እዩ ፈራሕ ይገብረካ መሰልካ ከይትኽብር ይገብረካ እዚ ዝሓለፍክዎ እየ ዝነግረኩም ዘለኹ ተመኩሮ እዩ ነዚ ክማጎት ክመጽእ እየ ቁኑዕ እዩ ፅሩይ እዩ ፖለቲካ ናይ ትግራይ ዝመፃእናዮ ንኸዶ ዘለና ብታሪኹን ዝበለ እንተመፅኡ ሚኪ ሓደራኻ ደሊኻ ክተምፆ ናብ መድረኽ እቶም ዝቕፅሉ ዘለዉ መድረኻት እዚኦም እዮም ክኾኑ ማለት እዩ ኣዶና ወይዘሮ ምፅላል ይበሃላ ፓርላማ 3 ግዜ ድን 2 ግዜ ሽኒፈን ጓል ደጃዝማች ገብርሄት እየን البرلمان بهاي سلاسة نيران مقال أود سوار خيبنا كي متاخ ناتو دحارو قعنانا انتاي بزعوات تقراي تاكن من خيلي النايا تقراي مالت دو تقيركم موزن يوخم يو خالي يلا حادة بدو بلا نا مالتي كالي خي كاو خا حشكرنا خا أبد حرقوز الله زي حسكا بزعوة عد مهنات كعاي متسنمو تأتي خاز نوركا تحجسكا لها ناي بوليتيكا تحاسبا ونعود سوفت وير كدربي مالتي زعوا ممهر سلازفنكا مهور سلازفنكا بوليتيكالي افكتيفها سرعة تفتر زخيلة تحاسبا لكا مالتا يكونني ري انجينير كنقبر لنا دقي بزيتات مالتي سلازي أبزا داي غازي أسامرايس قبر نيشن بيلد نقدر نتولنا هاجر دو إثيوبيا نكون نتولنا زي حزنا عين خيدنا تغيرنا هنا خنقورا دكنا خاخم مهارو لهم تكارو مناسي تاين حلف لهم نتلنا ونزيا هنا نحلف زيا قمتكا أبزا فرق ودنها قسل حسكا خيدي نتلكا أي تغيرنيها زي كابسترات تمكرو بزح نجر مدرخات له أدالو حسكا لها زحبا نجر يلن كلهم طلعون نقدمت إلى إذا أمنا عني اللي تنكي
يغني لي فرد هاب لي يا أتبركات ملقاك عقل غيرك بخانا لها بزحي كرتان وحنا يعينا لما أنت سلازيو حسرة بك يا ستقرينا أو أنت لنا معصوي سي قديتها سلازور كينا حسرة بك يا معصوي غيرنا
أنا كحسرة بزح تو نجارات تدقاقيمو تتنجرت ترجم كله يخدم جن حدا نجار كله زد اللي نجار كفتو زحلف ناي 10 ورحي 9 ورحي يقرأ تمكرات كأبنت متكاسيب صلاتنا أب تجراي حزبي أب حزبنا أب عدنا زبزحوا قفعن مكران بربعته بحموشته شنخ زي تبع الخاكي زحسب أيكونن أبز النبرو إسرائيل حدا كفل زمن صلاتنا تسفاك نقرص كنحمم كنسعر بناي أمره زحفتنا غيره جن أيكون اللومن انتاي غيرو زغرو زغبرو چكانه زغبرو زلو ودتاتنا أحواتنا بدفار بتخرستيان مسجد مقصالن بارتلري ويم دما بمدافع مدفع ناي بعلتنا ناي بتخرستيان سنه صحف خونه ناي اسلمنا تختلتي كم النقاش بزح مننتنا كتفو زغورو صعري تغارو بزبلصه حدا دمصي كهلونا أفعل علم شنخ زنبرنا لا حدا يمسينا مدام زي أي ودك لا يزي كوزي بوتا يو زي أمزي عينة التحساس الله تواهلو السب للنهر حدو زنا قرلو زنبر جزء أبكي زي اتناي دايسبورا ويم دما عدون كم زترى أو تجري ديفنس فورسز زلوا بمولو كفتفال عليه شنخات ويما التحساسبان الرأيان زلوا سبات حفظوا راح ناي حدا بارتي يكون سلازي تأيو بحالسيرو تقارو لا حدا مدرخ إذا تسقف قفعي لا حدا بوتا أمسينا أفتا بوتا عدي تقراي حقرنا كنسرح عدل فتير لنا له زي عدل زي دما كنتكمل دحر قوينا اتو زحلفه صقمات كندهاس سوي يقبا اتو زحلفه خونتات كل نجر صبو نيروي لك محلاف قرب انجينيرز يخو صقمات نيروي او فتحي او كورابشن او حدا ناي ايكونومي او ناي فرتلايزر او ناي مريت بزملكت نجارات كله زي حدا صقمات ترأيهم حبرتسبنا تسفا كقرص لقبر زنبره فرد بيت خونه افتح ناي بوليتيكا بروسس خونه اذا نجارات زي كرملو لخل خونتات كفتر الله اذا نجار زي حيزنا لقدميت كنخيدين نخلي طيب امامها دحر بلمبي معلخا ريكوغنايز غيرها كتعريه دحر زي خالخا حنت مرجع يا زله توقع حيفها مخادي سلازي زل حلفه خونتات بدمبي بتلقي كنا دهسسو يقبا تشكر لك كم جيبورتي حدا تقلت خايو حدا تقلت خايو حدا سلازغونه إذا نجارات زي بدم أدرس كبر الله تشفافينها ዓዲ ፀገምካ ተሸፋፊንካ ናይ ሓደ ውልቀ ሰብ ወይ ናይ ሓደ ፓርቲ እናሸንፈንካ ናይና እዮም እዚኣቶም እዮም ችግር ይሰርሑን ኣይጋገይን ልባል ተሓሳስባ ከተፍለሉ ምስሩ ኣብ ፖለቲካ ዓለም ክስተዕ ዘለካ ስሕተት ምግባርካ ኣይቀርብ ስለዚ እቲ ስሕተት ድማ ክእረም ዝኽእሉ ናይ ፓርቲ ኣባላት ንንሕድሕዶም ሰልፍ ክሪቲዝም ብምካየድ ጥራሕ ኣይኮነን እቲ ሕብረተሰብ እውን እጃም ክህልዎ ኣለዎ ኣብዚ ፕሮሰስ እዚ ስለዚ ኢንክሉሲቭ ዝኾነ ፕሮሰስ ኣብ ትግራይ ምህላው እቲ ናይ ባዕልትና ዋሕስትና ዓብዪ ግደ ይፃወት እዩ ዝብል እምነት ኣለኒ እቲ ብስራት ሓወይ ዝበሉ ሓሳባት ኣነ እውን ብወገነይ ይድግፎ እየ ሶል ሰርችንግ ዝበሃል ኣሎ ክንገብር ኣለና ሓደ ፓርቲ ተለይኮነ ኩሉ ከም ሕብረተሰብ እውን እዚ ጌጋታት እዚ ላትገበረ ልክዕ ሓምቲ ዓዲ ኣምሓራ ዝግበር ዘሎ ማለት እዩ ከዚ ዝኩሉ ጌጋታት እናተገበረ ዝኩሉ ሽግራት እናተፈጠረ ዝግበር ዘሎ ኩነታት ንኣብነት ላሊበላ ተታሒዙ ክበሃል ተሎ ናይ ዩኒስኮ ድኾነ እዚ ዳ ከምዚ ድኾነ ከምዚ የጥፍእዋቶ ይበሃል ኢማጂን ማይክ ኣብ ኣክሱም ላሊበላ ካብ ኣክሱም ዝነቀሰ ይኮነን እሱ እውን ናይ ዩኒስኮ ሄሪቴጅ እዩ nobody said that እንደይ ኣድባራት ነይሩ ምንም ነገር ኣይተባሃለ እዚ ግን ከምዚ ዓይነት ኣለዎታት ከምዚ ዓይነት ሽግራት ስለ ዘሎ ኩላትና ብፍላይ ኣብ ዝኸዚ ናይ ትግራይ ዲፌንስ ፎርስስ ዝገብሮ ዘሎ ኩነታት ብዙ ዝግበር ዘሎ ሪላክስ ኮይና እቲ ዝጀመርናዮ ስራሕ ጠጠው ክንብል የብልናን ሞር እናሰራሕና ክንኸይድ ኣለና ሞር እናተቀራርና ንኸይድ ኣለና ሞር እንደገና እቲ ናይ ፖለቲካል ስፔስ ነግኒ ማንም ኣይሂበናን እዚ ብጊፍት ልምፃእ ኣይኮነን ኩሉ ቃልሲ ብቃልሲ ካልመፅእ ነገራት እዩ ስለዚ ክቡና እዮም እዚ ክመፀልና እዩ ልበሃል ካብ ርእስና ክነውፅኦ ኣለና ተቃሊስና ልክዕ ከምዙ TDF ፎርስስ እናተቃለሱ ዘምፅእዎ ዘለው ንባዕልትና እውን ቲ ስፔስ ንተዓንትዎ ዝበልካዮም ጀነሬሽን ጋፕ ስለ ዘሎ ተቃሊስና ለኣቶም እውን ክነምፅአሎም ንኽእል ባይታታት ክንፈጥር ስለዚ ብዙሕ ነገራት ተደጋጊሙ ስለልተዘረበ ኣነ ኣብዚ ጠጠው ከብል ይደሊ እየ ከምዚ ዓይነት ዲስከሽን እንደገና ክቅፅል ኣለዎ ካሊእ እንደገና እቶም ኦዲየንስ እውን ለኣና ዝርዩ they have to participate ንሕና እኮ ናታቶም ኣካል ኢና ንስሙ ዳኣይ ናብዚ ሓሳብ ንህብል ኣለና እምበር ንሳቶም እውን ሓሳብ ክቡ ምሳና ክማጎቱ ዝኽእል መድረክ ተተኸፈተ ፅቡቅ እዩ እና ይቀኒልና I hope every Friday በዚ ዓይነት መልክዕ እቲ ኦዲየንስ ሒዝና ተቐፀልና እቲ ሕብረተሰብ ተጠቃማ ይኸውን ዝብል ግምት ኣለኒ ይቀኒለይ
Thank you. يونيلي أتبركات يا دكتور غلاديوس تا خمسة زولنا بقى بتها مصحف زمزت يعني أنا بتقرني أقيم تلبيلي أفتح متشرشة إلى عنده سلازي مدرك نوم
سبو بتاعنا سبو طبعا قينو لما حالتي استقايد نايلو محلت خلو زغل بروجرام بتاعنا عوتيو نسان سبو غير كاميرا حكاية لخا ግን ኣብዚ ኣሕዋተይ ዝበልዎ ክልቲኦም ክውስኸሉ ዝደሊ ሓድሽ ነገር እኳ ተዘይኮነ ግን ንሓዋሩ ክጠቕመና ዝኽእል መሰረታዊ ለውጢ ድማ ከምፅእ ዝኽእል ኣብ ሕብረተሰብና ዝብሎ ጥራይ ክቐርብ ዝደሊ ሕጂ እንታይ እዩ መጀመርያ ቅድሚ ኩሉ ናይ ኣተሓሳስባ ለውጢ ክህሉ ኣለዎ ምክንያቱ ብዙሕ ግዜ እንታይ እዩ ተጋሩ ጀጋኑ እዮም ተጋሩ ባህሪ ዘለዎ እዩ እዚ ሕዚ ምንም ዘጠራጥር ኣይኮነን ግን ሓደ ፀገማት ኣሎ ፅባሕ ንግሆ ምስ ናይ 21 ክፍለ ዘመን ዓለም ክንጓዓዝ ተኮይንና ኣተሓሳስባና ክንቀይር ኣለና ብናይ ቀደም ክንከይድ ኣይንኽእልን ዘለዓለም ኣብዚ ግን ዓብዪ ግደ ክፃወቱ ዝግብኦም ምሁራት እዮም ምሁራት ክብል ከለኹ ከምዚ ከማይ ማለተይ ጥራይ ኣይኮነን ብዙሓት ምሁራት ኣለዉ ቅድሚ ሕጂ ሓቲትና እዮም ምሳና ተፀንቢሮም ንኽሰርሑ ግን ከይመፁ ዝተረፉ ኣለዉ መሰሎም እዩ ተደልዮም ይምፅኡ ተደልዮም ኣይምፅኡ ምክንያቱ ምሁር ኩሉ ግዜ ሓደ ይኮነን ገለገሊኡ ሓደገኛ ምሁር ኣሎ ነቲ ክፉእ መንግስቲ ከይተረፈ ኣማኻሪ ኮይኑ ዝቐርብ ንከብዲ ዝሓድር ማለት እዩ ምሁር ስለ ዝኾነ ዋጋ የብሎ ገለገሊኡ ከዓ ስቕ ኢሉ ጠፊኡ ዝነብር ኣሎ ኣብ ማንም ዘይረአ ዘይስማዕ ካልእ ከዓ ኣክቲቭ ዝኾነ ምሁር ከዓ ኣሎ እዚኦም ፓብሊክ ስኮላርስ ይበሃሉ ፓብሊክ ስኮላር ኩሉ ግዜ ምስ ህዝቡ እዩ ንህዝቡ ይመርሕ ንህዝቡ ከዓ ለውጢ ናይ ኣተሓሳስባ ንክህሉ ኣስተዋፅኦ ይገብር ማለት እዩ ነዚ ንምግባር ግን እንታይ የድልየና ቅድም እኳ ጠቂስዎ ነይሩ ሓውና ብስራት ኢንስቲቱሽንስ ክንፈጥር ኣለና ናይ ግድን ኢንስቲቱሽንስ ዩኒቨርሲቲስ ገለገለ ጥራይ ኣይኮነን ብዙሕ ነቲ ሕብረተሰብ ከገልግሉ ዝኽእሉ ትካላት ነቲ ህዝቡን ዝሳተፈሉ ትካላት ናይ ቀደም ሓደ ባህልታት እውን ኣሎ ብጣዕሚ ዴሞክራቲክ ዝኾነ ብትግራይ ዝካየድ ዝነበረ ባይቶ ዝመሰለ ሓደ ግዜ በዚ ዋጅራት ገፀይ ከይደ ብዙሕ ተምሃርክዎ ነገር ኣሎ ብጣዕሚ ዝገርመኒ ነገር ስርዓት ቃንጫ እዮም ዝብልዎ ኣብቲ ከባቢ ስርዓት ዓኽዋይ ከዓ የብልዎ ናይ ሕርስታይ ምባል እዩ እቲ ህዝቢ ኩሉ ይእከብ እሞ ኣብኣ ተሳቲፈ ኣነ ኮፍ ኢለ ደቂ ኣንስትዮ ከዓ መፃ ምግቢ ገለገለ ኩሉ ሒዘን ይመፃ ብክቢ መልክዕዮም ኮፍ ዝብሉ ባይቶና እውን ከምኡ እዩ ናይ ስርዓት ቃንጫ ግን ዝገረመኒ ኩሉ ሰብ ኮፍ ኢሉ ይማየጥ ዝምርሖም ሽማግለ ኣሎ እናተደማመፁ እምበር ዘቋርፁ እውን የለን ሓደ ምስ ወደተ ሓደ ምስ ወደተ ሓደ ብጣዕሚ ዝገርም እዩ ሕጂ እዚ ንሕና ኣየስተውዓልና ኣሎን ዲሞክራሲ ክበሃል ከሎ ናይ ምዕራብ ጥራይ ዝመሰለና ንዕኡ እውን ንመልሰሉ መገዲ ነማዕብሎ መገዲ እንደገና ንሃንፆ መገዲ ክንፈጥር ኣለና እየ ዝብል ዘለኹ ኣነ ኣብቲ ፅሑፋተይ እውን ከምኡ ገይረ እየ ዘቕርቦ እቲ ዲሞክራሲ መሰረታዊ እንታይ ይጠቕመና ዲሞክራሲ ምስ ዝህሉ ምፅውዋር ይህሉ ምድምማፅ ይህሉ ምክብባር ከዓ ይህሉ እዚ መንፈስ ናይ ዲሞክራሲ ገለገለ ሰብ ኣኼባ መፅእ ንክቃወም ጥራይ ዝመፅእ ኣሎ ንክቃወም ጥራይ ምቅዋም መሰሉ እዩ ግን ንክትቃወም ኣብኡ ክረኽቦ ነቲ ሰብ ኢልካ ምምፃእ ሓደገኛ ዝኾነ ኣረኣያ እዩ ብጣዕሚ ሓደገኛ እዩ ድሑርካ እዩ ሕጂ እንታይ ይኸውን ከም ኣብነት ሓንቲ ክቕርባ ዝደሊ ቀደም ኣብ ኣፍሪካ ሙሉእ ዲሞክራሲ ነይሩ እዩ ብዙሕ ሰብ ዘይፈልጦ ኮይኑ እዩ እምበር ነይሩ እዩ ግን ግሪካውያን ዲሞክራሲ ከም ጀመሩ ገይሩ ይዝረብ ልክዕ እዩ ኣብ ኣቴንስ ዲሞክራሲ ተፈጢሩ ነይሩ እዩ ድሓር ግን እንታይ ይኸውን እቶም ኦሊጋርኪ ዝበሃሉ እኩባት ሰባት መፂኦም ነቲ ዲሞክራሲ ድምስስዎ ብናቶም ልክዕ ከምዚ በዓል ኣብይ ዝገበርዎ ሕጂ ማለት እዩ ብናቶም ኣካይዳ ጥራይ ጨቂኖም ነቲ ህዝቢ ሒዞም ክጓዓዙ ጀሚሮም ፈላስፋታት ብዙሓት እዮም ነይሮም ኣብ ግሪክ ሓደ ካብቶም ፈላስፋ ክተቕሶ ዝደሊ ዲዮጂነስ ይበሃል ዲዮጂነስ እንታይ ይገብር ኣብ ዕዳጋ ፋኑስ ሒዙ ይኸይድ ፋኑስ ፀሓይ ኮይኑ ፀሓይ መዓልቲ ምሸት ዘይኮነስ ብፀሓይ እምቧዕ ሓቶም ህዝቢ ደድሕሪኡ ይኸዱ ምክንያቱ ይፈትውዎ እዮም ሰምዕዎ እዮም ክምህሮም ከሎ እከቡ ዲዮጂነስ ተፀሊሉ ኢሎም እሲ ኢሎም ግን ከይዶም ሓቲቶም ዲዮጂነስ ተኾንካ ርኣኻ ፋኑስ ሒዝካ ብፀሓይ ይብሎም ኣሎ ሰብ እንዲ ጠፊኡ ሰብ ይደሉ ኣለኹ እዚ ኩሉ ሰብ ከ እብልዎ ናይ ሓቂ ሰብ ዴሞክራቲክ ዝኾነ ሰብ ዝፃወር ዝሰምዕ ዘድምፅ ዘኽብር ሰብ የደሉ ዘለኹ ይብሎም ከመይ ዝመሰለ መልእኽቲ እዩ ዝምህሮም ዘሎ ንሕና ከዓ ነቲ ሕብረተሰብና ብከምኡ ክንሃንፆ ኣለና ዴሞክራቲክ ዝኾነ ዋላ እታ ዋጅራት ዝረኣኽዋ ስርዓት ቃንጫ ትኹን ዋላ ባይቶ ትኹን ዋላ ዲሞክራሲ ናይ ምዕራባውያን ሓዊስና ነቲ ህዝቢ ክንምህሮ ኣለና እየ ዝብል ኣነ መጀመርያ ምክንያቱ ቅድም ኣተሓሳስቡ ተዘይተቐይሩ ኩሉ ግዜ ሽግራት ክህሉ እዩ ኩሉ ግዜ ዕንቅፋት ክህሉ እዩ ብሰፊሑ ካብኡ ከዓ ኣነ ከም ምሁር መጠን ኣብቲ ኣብያተ ትምህርቲ ኣብ ኤሌመንተሪ ስኩል ይኹን ኣብ ሃይ ስኩል ይኹን ኣብ ዩኒቨርሲቲ ይኹን ከም ካሪኩለም ክኣቱ ኣለዎ ናይ ዲሞክራሲ ስርዓት ኣረኣያን ትምህርትን ብዝብል ኣብኣ ክመሃር ኣለዎ እቲ ተምሃራይ እውን ተሃኒፁ ክወፅእ ኣለዎ ለምሳሌ ማቴማቲክስ እንድሕር ኮይኑ ሜጀሩ كم إلكشن كأ ديمقراطي كورس دارلو هاني صوت صباح نقول مرحكوا يسبزي حكيم تخوينونكم وقال تخوينونكم تراين تاريخاويان نبوليتيكال ساينس نخن كقدف يا ولنا زي ديمقراطي زبها النجار عمد لاي نجاري سلازي نسو تحيزنا تمدد قليل يخون ازي قدلت ازي انها لو ندحر كيدنا جن ينقفات زحك كمصانا خيل حج انت عينا حنقبر زلنا بحلفتهم ابدق زلنا انا خون برخات يخون بسرات يخون كالوت يخون مستخهم مايك بعلها يتوم صب انا حنتي بوتنشال زرع اخو ولا بز دايسبورا تعمل دس زبل يتوم انا اسي كمان يكونون تتحساسوا قرب فليز بلاي مور اوبنيون إذا مستير محبا جلز بهالنجر ونا يفلطوني نسون part of democracy بايزوه أو potential الله حجنا عطاتهم هانيصنا عنتو يزبرنايو ناي تاريخا ناي قلن دما هيبنا كندالو مالنا تداليوم نعدهم زملسو له مقدي صباح نقول زقلقلو له مقدي ناي قدن ملو ناو خيدهم ريلوكيت قوري كون انت نقر ግን ከይዶም ከም ሓሳብ ዘቕረብክዎ ነይሩ ቅድሚ ሕጂ ኣነ ምሁራት ተጋሩ ሳመር እናኸዱ ከገልግሉ ንዓዶም ዝብል ግን ኣብ ስራሕ ኣይውዓልን እቲ ዕንቅፋት ዝኾነ ከዓ ኣብዚ ክዛረበሉ ይደልን እየ ግን ዋላ ፅቡቕ ነገር ከማ እንተወፍኻ ሓንሳ ከም ሕማቕ ዝረኣየሉ ወይ ዝትርጎመሉ ነገር ኣሎ ስለ ዘጋጠመኒ እዩ እዚ ነገር እዚ ንኸይድገም ድሕሪ ደጊም ትግራይ ትብል ክትዕንብብ ተኾይና ማለት እዩ ዓብዪ ኣስተዋፅኦ ክንገብር ኣለና እሞ በዚ እየ ዝዓፅዎ ይቐኒለይ
يغني بطعمي مبار خورات على ملوز لهم أخواتنا حدشتي سمعتنا ون بإنجليزنا جميرنا بتجرينا خمس جرنا عصينا لنا خمس عد لقات إيمنا جين مستم خورات أخواتنا ببوليتيكا بأكاديميا كل نجار خمس جرام حوالي خمسولنا نخرج خقرولنا بخبري نامسجنا بزلنا على ملو سلام نخزلو مجمرتان تجارو أخواتي على ملو زلهم أيهم مرالنا دحر عيزي ندحريت نولو نجار سلازيلي حواتنا آياتنا حيزنا تقراي نزل علم تقراي تعود يغني لي كورتي هذا اللي دحان حضورنا ولكو بزينا لما أنتي عزنا يا برنامجنا بخور بركات كيروس كور بسرعة أماري كور دكتور غلاديوس ياو كاتلو هايام كلهم حيزون أنا لسه خينكم نكاتلو كل سلازلنا يغني لنا
Thank you. صبوا ليت